Thank you, everyone, for being here this afternoon. I know that it might have been a very emotional night and morning for folks, so we really appreciate you coming, and we're hoping that this conversation can bring us all together no matter what part of the political spectrum we're on. We're here to talk today about how to make changes that can impact the planet and improve our lives as well. We're really lucky to have three very special guests with us here today. But before I do that, one of our guests reminded me that we should introduce ourselves and who we are as Big Rocks as well, because not everyone is familiar with us. So, Big Rocks Organizing is a company that I founded 9 years ago. We're based in the Portland, Oregon metro area, and we assist folks through life transitions. Our superpower is empathy, and we help folks with organizing their homes, cleaning out an estate after someone has lost a loved one, and with moving. So oftentimes we're working with our clients on right sizing and helping them make decisions about what to keep and what to let go of. But when we face those decisions about what to let go of, we often wonder what's going to happen to this item if we recycle it, if it goes to the landfill, if we're giving it away to a nonprofit organization. So we have some guests here today who can kind of answer that question and help us come full circle and talk about maybe intentionality too, and being intentional about what we're bringing into our homes and into our lives as well. So I'm very excited to introduce our first speaker. I'm going to introduce all three, and then each will have about 5 to 10 minutes to talk about their organization or their program. And then we're going to open it up for a live Q&A, so you can ask any of the speakers or any of the Big Rocks team members questions. So Jocelyn, you want to wave and we'll pin you. Jocelyn is one of our Big Rocks team members. She's also a master recycler. She retired after a 36-year career with the USDA Forest Service, working in recreation management. She has a degree in renewable natural resources and completed graduate studies in forestry. Jocelyn became a master recycler after completing Metro's Master Recycler program during the fall of 2023. Her passion is recycling and repurposing items and keeping them out of the landfill. She creates whimsical garden benches, potting tables, and garden art for sale through her business, Reseated in Time, spelled Thyme. In her spare time, Jocelyn loves gardening, hiking, training her Australian Shepherd Parker, and creating art. So thanks for being here today, Jocelyn. Okay. I'm really excited to introduce Erin Metzger. Prior to joining Ridwell, Erin held product and marketing roles for a variety of food and beverage businesses, including Starbucks and a Pacific Northwest-based sustainability-focused quick service restaurant chain. That's quite a mouthful. She has an MBA from the Kellogg School of Management. She lives in Seattle, Washington, and is the head of community for Ridwell, leading community programs that engage neighborhoods in sending less to landfills. We're really excited to have you here today, Erin. And then last but certainly not least, we have Nora Paul. There you are. You're in the top. Everybody keeps moving around. Okay. So Nora is a member of the Cracked Pots Reclaim It board, heading the outreach committee. She's also been volunteering in the store for 3 years. She's also a recycled materials artist and never runs out of inspiration, being among all the great stuff that is gleaned from the transfer station. So we're excited to have you here today as well, Nora. So we're going to start with Jocelyn, and then we'll have Erin and then Nora speak, and then again, we'll open it up for a Q&A. So I hope everybody brought their burning questions today. Jean, can you go ahead and launch Jocelyn's slides, and we'll let Jocelyn take it away?
I just wanted to thank Whitney and the Big Rocks team for inviting me. I haven't had an opportunity to really do a presentation to a lot of folks about this. Most people think they know everything there is to know about recycling, but we'll start off with the topic at hand is sustainability, and really how can we reduce our impacts on the environment. Next slide. So what I'm going to talk about briefly, if I can be brief, are three key points, and that is the Master Recycler Program, um, what some people call the Oregon Materials Recovery Act, and the hierarchy of waste management. Who would have thunk? Next slide. So I was intrigued by the Master Recycler Program. I wasn't sure if I wanted to become a master gardener or a master recycler. And I thought since renewable natural resources was in my bailiwick, that I thought I would look at that. Well, the program is sponsored by Metro, and for those of you who live in the Portland area, Metro consists of Multnomah County, Clackamas County, and Washington County. And the program rotates every session to one of those counties. So it's never in the same county twice in a row. And I put down it's 12 weeks. It may be a little bit longer. The really only requirement is that you attend all the sessions and the field trips, 2 weekends of field trips, and do your volunteer service, which is about 40 hours a week. But when I took the class, I learned that the Master Recycle Program is more than just recycling. And I'm going to share with you what we'd learned. Next slide, please.
And Jocelyn, before we move on, I think you said 40 hours a week of volunteering, but my
Oh,
understanding was that's all
oh,
together.
40 hours period. I'm sorry. That would
Okay.
be a lot of volunteer time. I wanted to set the stage. One of the things we learned in our course early on was that Oregon passed a law in 2021, and we all probably voted for it, but it didn't occur to me until I took this course, the Recycling Modernization Act, and some people call it the Plastics Act and other names, but it really is focused on taking action in 2025. And what we will be seeing is that the law makes recycling easier for the public. It expands access to recycling services. A lot of people, particularly some of the multi-residential areas like apartment buildings, don't have those services provided. For example, they may not all have recycling bins or yard debris bins in their complex. It also upgrades the recycling facilities. Many of our recycling facilities are quite old and a little bit out of date in terms of their technology. And it standardizes a list of recyclable items. One of the biggest complaints I hear from people is, I don't know what I can recycle. And maybe I lived in Multnomah County and I moved over to Washington County. Well, the list isn't the same because we have different providers of those services. And those providers help determine what will go in your basically your recycle bin. The act also makes producers and manufacturers of packaged items, paper products, serviceware that a lot of food industries use, um, more recyclable, or other alternatives instead of just your basic styrofoam containers going into the landfill. Next slide. What I wanted to talk about is the hierarchy of waste management. And this is a little bit unusual because most people think of the triangle always starting wide at the bottom, going narrow at the top. But I want you all to think about a product that you may buy and its life cycle. How many of you are going to buy something for the holidays? Maybe a new TV, a radio, maybe some dishware. Well, every product or item has an impact on the environment. And when we say that is from the moment the materials are extracted from the earth, mined to create that product, you do have an impact on the environment. Then you move into manufacturing, the transportation of the good, the actual use of that item, that TV, and then what do you do when it stops working? The disposal of that TV. And what do you do once you dispose of it? Is there a way that you can recover the precious metals or any of those materials that were originally excavated, mined to produce that item? Sometimes that life cycle can last a long time. Back in the 60s and 70s, I remember we had a refrigerator that must have been 25 years old. Now we're lucky if things last a couple of years. So one thing to do when you're reducing consumption is ask yourself, and you can do this for the holidays, do I need it? Or does the person you're buying it for need it? Can I borrow or rent it? There are a lot of opportunities now, particularly in the Portland metropolitan area, where they have uh, tool shacks where you can go in and borrow tools, or if you pay for it at Home Depot or other big box stores, you can rent those items. And you can always borrow it perhaps from a friend. You want to avoid disposable items. Things like plastic silverware, plastic plates, cups. Even what gets me are the disposable razors. There's so much out there. We're a throwaway society. You want to avoid toxic substances. And on the Metro site, there's several recipes for creating green cleaners. And there's also body scrub recipes. So you can avoid some of those toxic substances that are probably in under your kitchen sink right now. And then down below, it's not showing, it's avoid food waste. So the average American probably throws away 40% of their food. And we're going to talk about how you can not do that by maybe ordering less or not cooking as much. Next slide, please. Then the next level is a reuse category. And my father was great at repairing anything. And throughout the community, there are repair cafes that you can go to, and free of charge, volunteers will help you repair an item. It may be a bicycle tire, it could be furniture, or it could be electronic equipment like a coffee maker. And another great resource is YouTube. Can the item be repurposed? And I see I don't have a space after claim it, but reclaim it is a great avenue for donating things that people may turn into art. And I won't say more about that. I'll let Nora speak to that. Habitat for Humanity Restore. If the item is serviceable and in decent shape, you can donate it there and it gets sold again to someone who may need a kitchen sink that you no longer wanted but is still in good shape. And another group is Scrap PDX, particularly for art supplies. Next slide. Since the course is Master Recycler, you think that we are going to spend all our time talking about recycling. Well, as you can see, the first two items at the top of the triangle, if we're doing those, we should be lessening the amount of materials we need to recycle. And now the problem is how do we recycle responsibly? A lot of people, even though they get the mailer and the flyer, and sometimes there's a giant sticker on the bin, they still do not put the correct things in the recycle bin. I'm sure all of you have noticed that as well. Yard debris, yard waste, for example. Many people put all kinds of things from lumber to plastic bags that they have their leaves in, or in the regular recycle bin, they're putting plastic film, which doesn't go there. And I'll let Aaron speak to Ridwell or some of the clamshells that aren't really curbside. Hopefully through the 2025 legislation act implementation that people will get a clear idea, but it's an uphill battle as far as education. And one of the things is there's a cost to that. There's a cost to recycle and a cost to compost. And the more we don't follow the guidelines, the more work it is. Next slide, please. So this is a sample of a conveyor belt at, now I'm blanking on the organization. Whitney, help me out here. Where we, well, our recycle bins go there. We'll
Waste
leave it at that.
management.
Pardon me, no, not waste management.
Jocelyn, did you want to say the materials recovery facility, the MRF?
MRF, yes, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
That's a big word. And I always think of Smurf, but thank you. Could you go back once, just for a second, please? It's hard to see on that slide, but there's a lot of contamination in that load. And the MRF hires pickers, and the pickers go through and they're just going constantly pulling out things and putting them in containers behind them of things that aren't accepted. Okay, next slide. For our compost, for those people who live in the metro area, our yard waste goes to an business in North Plains called Recology. And on the right, you can see a lot of the yard debris. And if you look closer, I think there's a trash can lid and again, plastic bags. That material, they only have one person operating in the lower left-hand corner, the grinder. And that person cannot spend their time sorting through all of this piled yard debris. Big items like giant 4x4 posts or anything major, they'll pick out. But that material goes through the grinder, including the plastic bags and your favorite dog's toy that got raked up with the leaves. And it sits for a couple weeks and then moved for a couple weeks. And the end result is this beautiful compost. Next slide. The one thing I want to mention about Recology is you are paying through your waste management company for the yard debris service. But then when you turn around and go to Recology, you can purchase compost. The next level is incinerate, and that isn't too frequent, but a lot of communities that cannot afford to transport their materials for recycling, it's not cost effective, will burn some of their garbage. And that's a big difference between metropolitan areas versus rural. One thing I saw a note, I think Jess said is, yes, sometimes you do get plastic in your compost. Next slide. And lastly is landfill. And hopefully, as you go through the hierarchy and follow this triangle, you would reduce your garbage, essentially what is going to the landfill. And when we visited Metro, if you look in the lower right, the Metro transfer station out on, I believe it's Columbia, every day approximately 60 semi truckloads leave Metro and they're headed for the landfill in Arlington. And you ask people, do you know where your garbage goes? Well, no. The guys with the trucks come and take it away. Well, we already found out where a lot of the stuff goes to the MRF, to recology. And so when their trash doesn't fit into any of those categories, it goes to Arlington. So there's a cost to transport waste, and the gasoline, the energy used to transport impacts the environment. And you have to question, how long is the Arlington landfill going to be viable? Next slide. So I'll ask you, how can you be more sustainable? By reducing, reusing, and recycling. And this is a great time with the holidays coming up, because the amount of garbage that's created during the holidays is pretty significant. So with that, I'm going to stop and thank you, and I'll be available for questions after everyone's ready. Done.
Thank you so much, Jocelyn. And ending with recycling, that's a really good segue over to Erin to tell us about her organization, Ridwell.
Yeah, that was really interesting, Jocelyn. Thank you. I never knew what Master Recycler was really all about. And there's obviously so much to learn about what goes where and the bigger picture of preventing things from going to recycling in the first place. So that was really interesting. If you want to pull up the slides, I can tell you a story about Ridwell, which is very entwined with my family as well. And then we can kind of talk about how this might be a solution that maybe some of you use, and if you have any questions, or just how this could be something to help you get rid of things, you know, in a way that you feel really good about. And we have some fun, delightful decluttering parts of Ridwell that I've always really appreciated as someone who wants to get rid of more things and just needs a little bit more encouragement. So you can go ahead to the next slide. So Ridwell started from a project that my husband and son, who was at the time 6 years old, on the right there, started as just a weekend, basically, hobby. If you go ahead to the next slide. But I'll get a little bit more into that. And to start, I'll just tell you kind of where Ridwell has come at this point, and then we'll talk about kind of how that idea started. But essentially, if you've ever seen one of these bins on someone's porch, we are a doorstep pickup service of items that can be reused and recycled, but just aren't suitable for the traditional curbside recycling system. So sometimes these are things that you could take somewhere and drop off. Sometimes there are things where there really isn't. We've created a network of over 200 partners, and there really isn't a drop-off opportunity. So we offer one of the very few ways to keep those items out of the landfill. That would include things like chip bags and granola bar wrappers and frozen food bags. Okay, I think go ahead to the next slide. So how did this idea start, right? It started because we had piles of things. This is a picture in my basement where we just had this table where we had all the different things that we knew shouldn't go in the landfill, and we knew that for some of them, there were places we could go drop them off. We were just busy family, didn't want to take the time to do that, or figure out, sometimes it's just really hard to figure out even where to go, because even if you go to the website that tells you where you can drop off the plastic film, it tends to change, or batteries, things like that. So sometimes we would go to a place and then find out that we couldn't actually use it anymore. So that was really the inspiration. Go to the next slide. And so when my son was 6, he got really interested in what happens when you recycle things or take things apart, just really curious kid. So my husband and him started this project where they thought, you know, let's just figure out where all this stuff can go. Like, let's figure out that the styrofoam can go in our area in Seattle to Styro Recycle. But, you know, that's like a 45-minute drive. They have limited hours. So if we're going to make the effort to go drive there, why don't we offer this to our neighbors? So they started posting on our local Buy Nothing group just to see if anyone else had styrofoam or light bulbs like you can see here. And they would go and pick it up from neighbors and then essentially do this recycling carpool to then go and do the drop off. And they ended up doing that pretty much every weekend for about a year and did over 1,000 different pickups. So it got a lot of interest across Seattle. So every weekend they basically pick a different neighborhood and a different category. And it was really good, you know, jumping out, going and grabbing the stuff, bringing it back in the cars. They had a really great partnership, and it was a really positive thing that they did. You can go to the next slide. So eventually it got really big and kind of there was, press. Owen was on the cover of Seattle's Child, which was super fun. But they started to realize that this was, there was more demand here than the two of them could handle, and so much opportunity to keep so many things out of landfills. You can see the back of my 2007 RAV4 that I still drive that was just full of broken holiday lights that were going to be taken to recycling. So at that point, you can go to the next slide. My husband Ryan, pictured here, found some co-founders and quit his job and just decided to do this full time and to found Redwell. So our first warehouse was my 1-car garage in our house, which you can see up at the top left. And now we have expanded. There's over 100,000 Redwell members. We have full-size real warehouses in all of the states here that are listed. And collectively, Redwell members have saved over, I think it's now like 123 million pounds from landfills since we were founded 6 years ago. Go to the next slide. So I just wanted to talk a little bit, and I'm sure these are things that Jocelyn knows a lot about and might be able to answer questions too, but I think a big question a lot of people have is, well, how come there's these things that we as Ridwell can recycle for you, but you can't put them in curbside recycling? And so the way I look at it is it kind of boils down to 2 big themes. One is just that some items don't work well with a single stream recycling system. So like Jocelyn was saying before, there's just things like plastic film. They can't be properly sorted. They can get clogged in the machinery. And I had the opportunity to tour a MRF where all of our recycling goes, and it was so enlightening. If something like that is available in your area, I would highly, highly recommend it, because all of a sudden, so many of the rules for recycling where you're just like, gosh, how am I going to remember these? Or like, why, in our area, it can't be smaller than 3 inches. Well, that doesn't make any sense. But then you go and you see and you realize, oh, so it gave me a lot more confidence. Like, I understand the system. Those rules just made a lot more sense, because essentially everything gets dumped on this conveyor belt. Yeah, there are some people trying to kind of like pull out some things and sort, but so much of it, at least here at our MRF, is done by like these computers and robots. I mean, it's this amazing technology that's being built to try to separate, the cardboard from the glass and the different types of plastic and identifying all of that. So what's crazy about plastic film, and by plastic film, I mean things like, grocery bags, but also bread bags, produce bags, the overwrap, if you buy a big package of toilet paper from Costco, all of those things, like that thin, stretchy plastic that you can kind of push your finger through, but also Amazon mailers, like those all plastic blue and white mailers, that's all plastic film. And the curbside recycling programs do not want that to go in your curbside bin, because it will end up clogging in this machinery. So it'll get stuck in the conveyor belts and basically shut down this whole really amazing system. And then someone has to go stop the whole process, go find it. And that just adds to cost for the system, right? Which isn't good for anybody. It makes recycling less viable. And then hazardous items. So, a light bulb that could get broken and has materials in it, and glass or batteries, right? Those just need to be handled through a different type of system than what we have at the MRFs. The other piece of it is that there's often no market for the items. So through the curbside programs that I'm aware of, the goal is really to sell the items and hopefully make a little bit on it to help support the program. So some things, the reason there may not be a market for it is it might just be really, really expensive to process. So something like recycling the chip bags, for example, that I was talking about, that's a multi-layer plastic that has all different types of plastic fused together. I mean, it's kind of a nightmare. So very few recyclers have the ability to actually, or want to take the time and the effort to try to separate those and be able to repurpose those. And then unfortunately, so many times the virgin alternatives are just so much cheaper. Like if I'm manufacturing something out of plastic, like, I don't know, I'm making plastic bowls or something, typically it's just significantly cheaper for me to go buy virgin plastic than to buy a recycled plastic. And so many times just, the rules of capitalism apply there. So the other thing that makes it so confusing is just because, the reason there are different rules everywhere is because these things, right, the sorting capabilities in each different region are different. The access to partners are different. Like, why do we have glass recycling available in some places and not in other places? Well, glass is really expensive to transport. So it's just not always going to be able to have a market for that if the the system has to transport those so far away. And then also I'm different budgets with different systems. So with Ridwell, we're really different because we're trying to flip the model on its head, and we're a member supported model. So members pay starting at $14 a month to have us come and pick up every 2 weeks these items. And so those are people who are basically voting with their pocketbooks to say, okay, maybe in many cases, we actually need to pay a partner to take our items, or at least pay for the transport to get it there. But we are able to do that, and we're able to focus because members are supporting us. And we're also able to focus on what are the things that our members would like to be able to recycle. Let's start there, and then let's build out what that could look like, and then figure out, how we can make that work through a member supported model. You can go to the next slide. So these are some of the examples of things that if you put them in curbside recycling, and this really holds across all localities, they end up in the landfill. So that would be things like those plastic like bubble mailers, bubble wrap, grocery bags, all the snack kind of food packaging that has the different types of plastic fused together. Lots of small things like bread tags, which seem really small, but honestly, that's something that we collect here, and it's just amazing to see. We can fill a whole huge, 6x6x6 cube of bread tags. And so, it does make an impact on the landfill to keep those out. Corks, air pillows. So those are all examples of things that shouldn't go in your curbside recycling because they're just not going to work well in that system. The little items end up falling through. They just fall through the machinery, go to the floor, and then they get swept up and taken to the landfill. So there's just no reason to do that. That's just causing more work, right, for the curbside system. But those are all the things that you can recycle with Ridwell. Can go to the next slide. So as Jocelyn was talking about, obviously it's about reducing and reusing, even more importantly than recycling. So I thought I'd just touch really briefly on how we're trying to make an impact in some of those things. If you, for example, want to sign up for Ridwell emails or go to our blog that's located on our website, we try to do a lot of content around just food waste is such a big one. So what are those tips and tricks about how you can waste less and reduce what you're bringing into your home? And then we also do a lot of different reuse initiatives. So we had a really amazing pilot with Starbucks up here in West Seattle, where they were doing a program where you could, if you show up I feel like the hardest thing about using a reusable commuter mug is that you need to remember to have it clean and have it with you and not sitting in your car, full of an old drink. So they were doing an initiative where you could show up at the Starbucks and then opt to get a reusable cup, and then you could bring it back to Starbucks the next time you came. But what they tested with us was actually having Ridwell members have a special bag for these where they could just return them through their bin. And that really increased usage and made it an easier program. So we're really excited about reuse opportunities like that. A lot of what we collect then goes to reuse. So when I mentioned delightful decluttering a little bit earlier, we always have a featured category that rotates. And so that will be things like winter warmth, where we collect, coats and hats and scarves, and those will go to organizations in the local community who then are able to repurpose them. And so we'll hear a little bit more about that from Nora at Reclaim It, because they are one of our partners who receives items that we are able to collect from members who don't have a use for them, and then able to put those to a new reuse. And then the last thing is that every year, we're about to launch this in a couple weeks, we actually work with partners to make items out of the things that we've collected. So it's a way to really show that full circle story. And this is, for example, is a bag that's made by an organization called Refleece. So we collected spent outerwear from our members. So like if the zipper had broken, or maybe it's not water repellent anymore, it's just really not working for its original purpose, then they're able to just turn that material and at least make it into, in this case, a tote bag. Can go to the next slide. So if you would like to join us at Ridwell, we are really proud to offer that anyone who donates that joins through this link, we are going to donate to Rosehaven, which is the Big Rocks charitable partner for this year. So we just wanted to, they are also a Ridwell partner as well, where we bring a lot of things that we collect from our members that they're able to reuse. And if you want to see exactly where we operate, there's more information at that link below. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin. And for everybody who's on the call today, we will send out copies of slides so you'll have access to these links and the presentation materials. So don't worry, and that'll come out early next week. Okay. Nora, you are up next.
Yeah, okay. I'm wondering if we can show the Reclaim It website. Can that be pulled up? So it's all one word, Reclaim It PDX, and it's .org. Yeah. Yeah. So Reclaim It actually is a sprout off of a organization that started in 1999. Called Cracked Pots, and it was really the inspiration of a master gardener and an artist, and both of them had a real passion for environmental causes and kind of creative reuse. And they ended up having a couple of little garden art shows, and then went big time and had very, very successful upcycle, recycle, reuse art shows at Edgefield, which is a big McMinimans property. This was a extremely popular event because I think it was one of the first to actually focus on creative reuse of of materials. And through that success, they generated enough funding to be able to rent a very funky store on a street corner in Portland, right on the corner of Killingsworth and Williams. There's our little store. And that opened in 2014. That opened because we were able, somebody with a connection with Metro was able to get permission from Recology, who runs the transfer station, to have people from our organization go to the landfill and essentially rescue things before they got scooped up and put on the big mountaintop of things that you see in the transfer station. So the transfer station is more, it's one of those places where you drive in and you've got your car full of all the stuff that had been down in your basement and your kids have been saying, clean this out for, a while. You take it in, they weigh your car, you dump it, and then you turn around and then you pay however much lighter your car is. And what we're doing with the gleaning is kind of stalking interesting looking cars as they pull in, because there will be beautiful furniture. There will be boxes full of all the knickknacks that somebody collected and nobody in the family wants, so they're going to throw it away. And if we're not there right when it kind of gets dumped, it could get lost. So I sometimes think of it as sort of like a humane society rescue, and we're taking these little lost items back to the store and hoping to help them find a forever home. But you can see the second picture over is there's Jonathan, our communications manager. One time a little truck pulled up and dumped all of these guitars, like 3 full drum kits, bugles and bassoons and all this stuff. And it was a record store or something that was emptying their things out, and brought them back to the store, and those have been scooped up for all sorts of purposes, sometimes redoing it for its original purpose, but also the big drum, that's a great coffee table, put some legs on it and a glass top. So anyway, I could ramble on about the wonders of the kinds of things that we find, and that is the predominant source of the things that we sell in the store. Our volunteers, you can see in the second, the third thing over. Yeah, the first screen is the folks gleaning. In fact, that's me in the over to the right. And Then on Thursdays, the truck comes, we take everything into the store, we clean it up, and then it's there for sale. So that's the largest part of what we get. But we also have these wonderful connections, like with Ridwell, and also with some of the organizations like Big Rocks or Frog and Toad, some of the organizations that might be hired to help clean out houses. And instead of what they would normally do in most places, just clean it out and go take it to the dump, they are consciously sorting out the kinds of things that they figure our organization could use. Community Warehouse, which Jocelyn mentioned, they take usable furniture for people that are being homed for the first time, perhaps. There's also the Rebuilding Center, which takes the recycled building materials and of course scrap, which I see the difference between scrap and us is scrap is more, is sort of like the goodwill for creative materials. And we're the rescue team for cool stuff that somebody didn't think was cool and they were throwing it away. So we also take donations, but and it's increasingly, it's surprising how difficult it is for people who have something a little larger to actually, oh, we're not taking them, oh, not material, yeah. Because we got a huge donation of just boxes and boxes and boxes of beautiful material. And
That was
sometimes
us. That
yeah.
was our team bringing in a truckload of fabric.
That was you? That was you?
That was
Oh
us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's been amazing. And what we got from Ridwell about a year and a half ago, you saw the Ridwell cardboard boxes. Well, we got about 600 of them. And it was all art supplies because they had a call for, put your old used art supplies in there. And it's like Christmas morning. I mean, you open it up and you don't know what you're going to find in the box. There'll be a mix of embroidery thread and pencils and a beautiful drawing kit and just amazing things. So we're still sorting and distributing those. That is also our mission, is to find those people or sources that could use some of the things that come in through our stream. And so we're really recruiting awareness of the school teachers that we have all this great stuff and you can come in and get a giant bag full of crayons and pencils for virtually nothing. So we are, let's see, what else should I say? Oh, one of the things I was going to say, Jocelyn was mentioning the Recycling Modernization Act coming up. One of the things that they're talking about is actually to try and perhaps have places where people could bring things that they know somebody might be interested in. They're just not anymore. And to be able to drop it off there so it doesn't get into the big giant transfer station pile. And that we would be able to, or other organizations would be able to have access to it more easily and keep those things out. I'm so impressed by Ridwell and how much it's saved from the landfill. In the 10 years that the Reclaim It store has been open, we just hit a million pounds that we have rescued from the landfill. And the thing that I love to think about is not only was it rescued, it was found by somebody that went, oh my God, I can't believe I found one of these, and they're so excited to take it back and do something really fun with it. That's my favorite thing. I cashier, and I always say, now, what are you going to do with that? You know, and it's just seeing people's creativity and how they can look at one thing and make it be something completely different. So that's what we do. We rely so much. We have a board of there's 8 of us now that we're all volunteers. There's no executive director. We have a small staff that runs the store. And truly the heart and blood of an organization like ours is the volunteers. And it's fun, the people that are drawn to come and unpack and clean and play with and price and merchandise and then say goodbye to all this amazing stuff that comes in. So it's one of the most wonderful serendipitous finds that I have ever encountered. I was just riding my bike down the street when I first moved to town, and there was this weird looking place, and I haven't looked back. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to talk about it, and it makes me realize I used to make lots of PowerPoints, and I'll make a nice PowerPoint slide next time to keep it a little more organized. But any questions?
No worries about slides, Nora. It was a great idea to go to the
Well, yeah, I'm
website.
glad the website showed up. Yes.
Yeah, so in the time that we have left, we have about 10 minutes left. I'm curious if folks have questions for any of our panelists today. And thank you so much to our panelists for sharing. It was a lot of information. I learned a lot today. I hope everybody else did too. Yes, Gwen.
I have a couple questions. What does one do with old furniture that you really don't need that is my husband's making a bunch of noise. That's like an old chair or couch. I saw it really briefly. It says not upholstered for some of the small furniture. What does one do with an old couch so it just doesn't have to get put into the landfill?
Right. We don't take upholstered things out of the landfill because generally something nasty got dumped on top of it, you know, so we're not able to go back and clean up upholstered items. But if you have an interesting piece of upholstered furniture, then we would probably accept it as a donation. We won't take anything that's press board. We kind of want quality junk, not just crappy junk. Yeah. So no IKEA bookcases, that kind of thing. But your grandmother's old oak bookcase that's kind of got the veneer off of it, bring it on in. Somebody will fall in love.
So my other question is, then you don't have pickup. Someone would take things to the Reclaim It Center.
Right. And that's a very good point. And in fact, the Community Warehouse is an organization that actively seeks donations of usable furniture that could be part of furnishing a new home for someone. And they will do pickups. They've gotten grants actually to get a couple of trucks because we know that that's a big issue for people. They also take donations of very fine things that they sell in their community, in their
estate store.
What's it called?
The estate store.
Yeah, the estate store. Really pretty stuff, very reasonably priced. But it supports the programming of the Community Warehouse.
I just wanted to jump into
are-
Gwen before, I was going to say before Gwen's second question, one thing is that we try to be a resource for the community. If anyone ever has a question like, what do I do with this? Even if it's not something that Ridwell takes, we, have spoken with a lot of partners, know a lot of these things in the community. So you're always welcome to reach out to, whether you're a Ridwell member or not, help@ridwell.com, and just email us with those types of questions.
Okay. Oh, that's really good to know. I just have one more question really quickly, and that's for you, Erin, is that we are currently, the reason I'm really interested in downsizing and recycling is because we are going to be moving in the next 6 months, and we're moving to Washington County, and in that area, the garbage haulers have somehow lobbied and they don't allow Ridwell to be there. Do you find that happens a lot where there's areas that it's been banned? And then secondly, then what would be our options then for looking for other ways to recycle the things that you pick up?
Yeah, great questions. Certainly when this project started with Owen and Ryan way back when, we would never have anticipated some of the regulatory hurdles that do face a business like ours. And yeah, there are some areas, luckily it's the minority, where the haulers have prevented us from operating. So it's a really sad situation. You know, we'd love to be able to get service to all of those areas. In terms of things that we take, yeah, it really kind of goes back to what existed before Ridwell, right? Like, is there a drop off for, say, plastic film? Sometimes you can find that at the grocery stores. It's just disappointing when you go to bring your plastic film in and there's like someone put their drink cup in there that's spilled all over everything, and you know that it's going to end up in the landfill. So there really aren't other services like Ridwell. I know there is something that was started called Waste Connections, which was started kind of by the haulers as something that looks a lot like Ridwell. I don't know what that experience really looks like.
But it's nothing like Ridwell. But the other thing that we're considering doing is just paying for the service with a friend who does live in a service area and then just collecting the bags and taking them over there once every 2 weeks. So
And when I live in Washington County, and Ridwell has pop-up events, and they're in the parking lot at the Beaverton Restore every other Saturday or 2 Saturdays a month. And
So
so
Whitney, I think we're at capacity for those events. So that's something that we offer to people who were members before we were told that we couldn't operate anymore. But last I heard is that we were at
You're at
capacity.
capacity.
Yeah.
Okay, it's nice that you have that alternative.
Yeah,
I
and I
wanted
think
to respond to, again, Habitat for Humanity. Their restore will take furniture and other items, but you know, if it's really worn, there's other sites too. Freebo, there are a lot of opportunities to dispose of items that other people will want as treasures for art, or just they don't have any money, and a worn out couch may be better than nothing. So there are a lot of resources. Sometimes it's not all put together. I did want to mention the James recycling events too, that specialize in other items. And then twice a year, we have usually Planet Con. I don't know if we're going to have it this next year, but they take a lot of specific things and pill bottles, etc. People save up for 6 months for those things.
And
So there's a
Ridwell
lot of
takes a
resources.
lot of
Unfortunately, it's not all put together.
that was my
Yeah.
question. Is there a single document that would show what are all the places to be able to recycle for specific things?
I'm so glad
No.
you asked that, Gwen, because our team put together a comprehensive recycling guide for the Portland metro area, and we're going to be sending that out and sharing that after this event as part of our post-event email. And
Yay.
Leilani, who's here today, created a recycling quiz, so you can test your knowledge about where to recycle different things, and it's fun and interactive.
That's, could I just say that we're gonna have, one of the things that we're starting to do in the store is, teachers are having a unit about this little curriculum unit that they go to the transfer station, they get to look at that, and then they come to the store and volunteer and help do some cleaning and sorting and stuff like that to get a sense of that reuse. If we could get a copy of that to make it to hand out to students and stuff, that would be really fantastic. And the
Yeah, well,
quiz would be really fun.
sure, you're welcome to share it with whoever you like.
Yeah,
Please
that's
feel
great.
free. Yeah, we have a couple questions in the chat. We have a couple minutes left, so I hope that we can address these for folks. Jess says, in California, I was able to donate ink cartridges to my son's school and they would get credit for them. Is there anything like that here, or do they just need to be recycled? Does anyone have knowledge about that?
we take ink cartridges through Ridwell.
Okay. but not necessarily to give credit to the.
Yeah, I work a lot with schools and I haven't heard of anything like that for like a school program or any cartridges.
Okay.
There is Staples takes back used cartridges.
I was just gonna say Office Depot.
Or Office
Yeah.
Depot,
Yeah.
yeah, Office Depot, those kind of places will take back cartridges. That's
So
what we
we'll
do.
have to check with them and see, would they be willing to give credit to the schools for that? Our team will have to investigate that. One last question for you all from Leilani. What can you do with compostable utensils and materials when you don't have a compost bin at home? Like the plastic utensils that say they're compostable, like, well, are they actually compostable? And then what can you do with those things?
That's a tough one. They're not always taken in like your yard debris bin. I would table that question to look into it a little bit more. But one thing I wanted to mention was the Ask Metro on their website, you can type in a question, is this recyclable? And if, they'll get back to you and give you some resources. They may or may not have a resource, like we lost our resource, Agilix for styrofoam, but you can always put in a question to Metro.
Whitney,
But
I just got something from, I'm in Lake Oswego, and in our monthly flyer, there was just a recycle thing, and it showed the compostable utensils going into the yard debris.
Oh, nice. Okay. Well, good. So maybe in 2025, when we get more standardized recycling in Oregon, that will be, across counties. That would be great.
Because it showed food compost that I had never thought of putting in the yard debris.
Very
the
cool.
fruits,
Thank
the-
you for sharing that, Marcia. And I just wanted to point out too, that although we don't have a Gillix in the Portland metro area anymore for recycling styrofoam, Ridwell is taking it up to the Seattle area for it to be recycled. So it's really nice that you're offering that to Oregon partners. I know that trucking it up there, like, we have these costs to offset, but it's just really good there's still a resource.
Hopefully we can inspire some more local, so we have really clean styrofoam if anyone wants to process it.
Well, I could talk with you all for like another couple of hours, but we're at time today. I just want to say thank you so much to our panelists. It's been amazing having you here. Thank you everybody for coming. I hope that you learned something, that this was interesting. We will be back next month with Ask the Organizer. It's going to be on Wednesday, December 7th from 4 to 5 p.m. on Zoom. And our topic is going to be giving back while clearing out. So we're going to feature 4 local nonprofits, and they'll come talk about their organization and what items you can donate to them to be rehomed with somebody else. So Gwen, that might be right up your alley as you're right sizing, getting ready to move. But thank you everybody again for being here today. We really appreciate you.